Welcome to the podcast. I am Shane Barker, your host of Shane Barker's Marketing Madness Podcast. Today we have with us Kat Howell, the founder and CEO of 8 Loop Social and the Facebook Ad Academy. In today's episode, she's going to let us in on some really big secrets. We're going to talk about how to take clients from 0 to 6-figure revenue. In the past, she's worked with big names like Coca-Cola, Amatil and Contiki, and helped them grow their businesses. I'm excited to learn from her and get to know more about her entrepreneurial journey. So did you actually grow up in New Zealand?
No, I'm Canadian.
You're Canadian?
Yeah. I've been here for 14 years though. I got imported by my ex-husband.
He imported you, huh? Was that willingly or was that kind of like your...
mail order Canadian bride? No, I was willingly, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. And what was he doing? I mean, why did you guys move out there? Was there a business or something?
Oh, he's from here. Yeah.
Ah,
so
he's from there.
Deciding New Zealand, Canada, and they don't snow here in the winter. So I was like, I'm down. But they don't have central heating. So the winters here feel almost colder than Canadian winters sometimes.
Oh, because you can't get warm.
Kiwis are just crazy. They wear do you know what jandals are? Flip-flops.
No.
They wear like
flip-flops.
shorts and flip-flops, and it's like 3 degrees Celsius outside, and they just, well, you're in California though.
I know. I made it seem like I was like part of that group or something. You're like, no, but I will tell you right now in California, it's like this morning when I went on my walk, it was 46 degrees, which is cold for California. And I had flip-flops on and people thought I was like, I should have been on my medication.
This is probably your jam over here. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to have to, New Zealand was like, I think you guys like number 9. Yeah. At this point, you're number 2. Actually, if I win the lottery, I'll literally just become a Kiwi. That's my plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, number 1, like, why would I not? Right. I just come out there and bring you your money and like some unmarked bills or something in a briefcase and be like, look what I have for Kat. You win again, or we win again.
Yeah. Just don't bring bananas or apples across the border. That stuff, the customs here, they don't really know how to sniff for cocaine or drugs. But if you try to smuggle a fruit fly in, like you're fucked. Yeah.
Really? So you've been able, the cocaine's been fine, but you got caught with a fruit fly? Is that what you're saying? You don't have to tell me because it's not like this is being recorded and the whole world's going to hear. So there's certain things you were able to get through and certain things where you got busted. So that's cool.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question on what can I sneak into the country. So
not fruit flies, definitely not bananas and fruit flies. Don't try that. Yeah.
My brother, and this is a true story. My brother actually, I don't know what country he was coming from, but he actually got busted bringing a mango into the U.S. And it was kind of like an accidental thing. But I'm not kidding. Like he's not on the do not fly list by any means, but they give him a little extra. Like, I don't know if he gets the glove test. I don't know if he's graduated, but they definitely give him the mango boy. Yeah. Like, oh, hey, sir, let's go ahead and see if we're going to strip down over here. We're going to play a little game called Where's the Mango? And I don't know. And once again, I don't know if he travels because he likes that game or what, but yeah, he's definitely on some type of a list. And I actually just recently, and this is all joking aside too, actually, I ended up on some kind of a list or something because in India, I didn't get crazy tests, but they are like any kind of a private dance or anything. But I've definitely, every country that I've been to has been like, kind of going down different ways than everybody else. And I'm like, I didn't bring a mango in. And maybe it's because my brother bought a mango in, or I don't know I don't know how I get flagged. Like, I don't think that I look
the mango smuggling family.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe that's, we've all smuggled a few mangoes in private places into airports. That's like what we do sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you can buy it for your family. But interesting. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. That's good about fruit flies. I'll definitely add that to my list of things not to bring when I come visit you, obviously with the cash.
You definitely have like the mango mule look about you, I gotta say.
It's the beard. We're like, it's either cocaine or mangoes, because that's like their big thing. Like, I'm not really sure if he's got an ounce of cocaine or if he has maybe eaten mangoes in private areas. So,
nice.
Once again, we all have our vices, I guess. And so you grew up in Canada, and then so obviously your family's from Canada. How big of a family you have in Canada?
Oh, just me and my sister and my parents, yeah.
Gotcha. So not that big of a family.
No.
And then where does your sister live?
She's in Vancouver at the moment. She's a bit of a nomad though.
Oh, she is, like, go around. Yeah, I was just in Vancouver. They were at the, what was the name of the conference? Anyways, it was a conference out there that they had out there about 3 weeks ago. I went out there and had some fun with, Uber Flips. That's what it was. The guys over at Uber Flips. Yeah, it was right there. And it was awesome. Like, the conference was right across the street from my hotel. And just the food around there was just phenomenal. So yeah, I'm a big fan for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, you said Vancouver.
Yeah, Vancouver.
I was thinking Toronto.
No, not Toronto.
I've only been to Vancouver once, but it
Vancouver's
was fun.
amazing because it's got the ocean
Ah,
and the mountains. But California has a lot of that too, right? Cities with
yeah.
oceans and mountains. Yeah.
No, it definitely does. And I'm in Sacramento. So like the hub of where I live is like San Francisco's an hour and a half away and then the beach is an hour and a half away. And it's not like this. I mean, it's still California prices, but it's not like San Francisco where you're like, you have like 1,000 square feet and it's, like $5,000 a month or something crazy. So it's still economical. In fact, long story short, I flip properties here too as well. So that's why we do in this area because everybody on the outskirts has all kinds of money and they come to Sacramento and buy something that it's like a mansion compared to what they live to in the city. So
Yeah.
So give us some, other than the fact that your ex-husband kidnapped you and brought you to New Zealand, what other fun facts do you have? Is there anything else like growing up or anything else that was interesting in regards to like how your upbringing, anything fun that nobody would know about?
Oh, I'm a pretty open book, so I don't know about like no one would ever know about. I think the thing that probably shocks a lot of people is they don't realize like I used to strip illegally when I was 16 to like 19. And again, I'm pretty open about that, so I don't mind sharing that story either. And then I think I'm pretty boring other than that, to be honest. Yeah.
I love it how you're like, I used to be a stripper, but other than that, I'm just kind of a regular girl. I'm boring. And I'm like, I don't know if that's what we think here. I don't think we're interviewing you today because you're like, I just don't have much to say and I'm kind of boring. I think it's maybe potentially the opposite of that. Interesting. So you strip. And not that we need to go into stripping in Canada and rights and laws and stuff, but so you have to be obviously 18 in Canada.
Yeah.
You snuck in with a little fake ID and said, listen, nobody's going to stop Kat. Right? Nobody's going to, not if I want to dance, if the cat wants to dance, the cat gets to dance, right? Like, so now I'll ask you my next question then is Kat your real name or is that your stage name? Is this your real, I want to make sure it's your real name now that we've jumped on
This is my real name. My stage name used to be Jazz.
Jazz, man, I could have Jazz. Interesting. Okay. These are all fun facts.
Yeah.
And everybody has a different thing. So I love it because, some people, when you interview them on podcasts, are very conservative. So they're like, well, this one time I, stole a banana from my neighbor's yard. And you're like, oh my God, it's crazy. And you're like,
mango.
So here's, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, but you're just like, well, I stripped for a little bit, kind of did my thing. Not a big deal. And then, so obviously, so you're in New Zealand. And did you go to college in Canada as well?
No, in New Zealand.
So you went to New Zealand. So so you guys moved to New Zealand like you were in your college days?
I was 19 when I met my ex-husband. Yeah. 19,
gotcha. And you met him?
Rescued me, I guess, and then made me a good girl or whatever, and then.
Gotcha. He just pulled you. There we go. I like that. He just rescued you. I like that. Well, like kind of like Batman,
right?
But a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Batman has a thing for cats, so they.
Yeah, hello. That's why it's all making sense. This is all coming together very nicely. I was a little wondering how this was going to come together, but it is. So then you actually, and so then you graduated from where in New Zealand? What college?
Massey University. Yeah, I did business and marketing. And I don't know that I I'm sure I subconsciously absorbed things. I made great friendships. I think university is like really good for that, especially when you're like an expat trying to find your way in a new country. But I think stripping taught me a lot more about entrepreneurship and sales and human psychology than uni ever did. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Like and I'm not going to go into heavy detail, but not that I was a stripper by any means, because they probably wouldn't let me. But there were certain things that I've seen in people that I know that have sales or have done stuff that with like psychology of working with people, and whether that be you're knocking on doors selling something, or whether it's whatever that is, but the psychology of that and how understanding how people work and how people get somebody to say yes and those certain things, I think is really interesting because you really can't. I can give you an example. I've talked about this in the past. Is like Mormons, right? So the religion of being Mormon, and you go on a 2-year thing of like selling a religion. Like, can you imagine? Like, you knock on doors and people are like, "Screw you," and you're like, "Cool, thank you so much, God bless you." Then you go to the next one. Like, how many no's can you take? But a lot of those guys and girls, when it comes to that religion, it's because they're like great salespeople, because they're used to, like, they're selling the hardest thing in the world, like religion, right? Like to people that probably don't want anything to do with it for the most part.
Yeah.
And then if you're able to really sell that, I mean, that's like, so they come out of there, they're like, you can tell me no 1,000 times. I'm just looking for the one yes. And so they like grind it out. It's kind of a different deal. Like alarm companies here in the US, alarm companies, and there's a lot of, what else? There's a few other ones that I have friends of friends that, once again, they're really good at those type of door-to-door sales because of their background in, selling religion.
Yeah, that's so true. For me, like the thing that I learned the most was how, because you would think like, oh, well, you just got to like motorboat someone and they'll give you money. But, you could have days where you would bank like $2,000 in a day, which was a lot of money for a 17-year-old. And then you could have days where you would come home with virtually like $10 in your pocket, and your look didn't change, your boobs didn't change. It wasn't any of that. It was your energy and the way you showed up. And that made me, since I've worked in the agency side and trained business developers and all of that, I've since come to realize like the energy you bring on a call or a sales meeting with people is everything. Your confidence, and that is like the most contagious thing. And if you don't have that, if you don't have that confidence behind you, if you don't have that frame, people are just not interested, no matter what you do. Yeah.
So $2,000 or $10, I mean, that's obviously a huge variance. Do you think it was the power of the motorboat? Do you think that maybe it was like sometimes you weren't like, sometimes you're like, I'm kind of into it, it's a Tuesday, and then other times you're like, it's a Saturday, and like the motorboat was over the top, or we're not really sure about the motorboats?
Well, we're still not sure about the motorboats, how effective those were, but it was definitely like an energetic thing, right? Because you have off days and you have on days. So if you've got an off day, like you're basically not having a great day financially.
Because people feel the vibe, right? Because it's like you kind of, if you're into it and having fun, then people are like, oh, okay, then it's like naturally you're kind of getting into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That makes total sense. I like the motorboat thing too, because that kind of, once again, brings it all back to where we need to be in regards to things that we've done in our past.
I feel like there's like a business idea here, right?
I know.
Sales training 101, lesson 1, motorboating.
Why would you not have a course on motorboating? I mean, I feel like there's a niche there. I feel like there's some people that are like, I just use one lip and I'm not really sure how to do both lips. And it's like, here, take the course. Like we could totally, not a big deal. You can just go take it and then you can go make more money down the road, which is not a bad thing.
Positioning. Yeah.
It's all about positioning for sure. So that's a great segue. So tell us a little bit about 8 Loop Social. So how did you start that? And what was your, I mean, 'cause it's interesting. You already have an interesting story, obviously, with your background and everything. Like, how did you jump into that in regards to the agency side of thing? Like, give us a little background.
Yeah. So for me, I kind of like naturally fell into it because I never thought I would ever be in advertising. I mean, I did study marketing, so I knew I was interested in human psychology and sales and that aspect of things. But when I got out of uni, I started work as a marketing manager for a business association. And I was constantly surrounded by entrepreneurs, property investors, developers, and working really closely with these guys. And you know the saying, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around with the most. I can't even stress that enough. It just completely created a catalyst in my mind where I was like, hold on, like these people are able to create this lifestyle for themselves, and why can't I do this, right? So I started a company called Yeti. It had every vowel in the dictionary. No one knew how to spell it. My ex-husband still drives around with the license plate. And it freaking bombed. Like it fell flat on its face. And I had invested like $50,000, $70,000 into that. Took a year to build it. And then there was like, we made maybe like $50 worth of sales. They were like for my mom and my dad.
Family.
2 of them was me testing the purchase page. So it was just really bad, but it was at a time when no one took Facebook advertising seriously. This was when Facebook ads was like something that interns did in huge corporations as well. And everyone just wanted boosted posts or Facebook likes or those kinds of things. And I had started to learn how to build communities and audiences because of Yeti. And people had started to pay it, like notice. And even though my company bombed, they saw that I was able to build communities and build followers and likes, which was the be all and end all back then. So I got asked to do like some contracting jobs, and that kind of snowballed into more and more work, and eventually realizing, okay, well, I need to bring some people on board if I was giving birth to my kids around that time, and I was just like really burning out. I had no time. So that was kind of the shift from like being a solo freelancer to going, okay, I need a team. So it wasn't even like a conscious, like, I want to build an agency. It was like, okay, I need a team. And then next thing I knew, I was like, oh, I have an agency now. Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
So is it true that you let your ex-husband keep that plates on his car because it was a bomb company and you kind of feel like the relationship went south? So you're like, why don't you go ahead and take the license plate of the company that also bombed, and you go ahead and drive that around, and so you can be a loser in the vehicle and the company, and then I'll just take all the knowledge that I did and start another company. Is that kind of the goal, or that just kind of naturally happened?
Yeah, it's like an olive branch, right?
Yeah.
Get the domain, you keep it. I'm sure it'll be worth millions of dollars down the track.
You hold on to that thing. That thing is going to be like a fine wine. Just let it mature. Let it mature, my friend.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to get threatened. If her husband listens to this, he's going to be like, oh, you think you're funny, Redbeard, don't you? Huh? I'm a loser because I'm in Cat's old vehicle. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to set you up some mangoes in your bag next time you come to New Zealand, get busted.
You better get your bags wrapped, saran wrapped.
I definitely will. I'll put the fruit flies somewhere. And so at least your agency, the goal of your agency is to work with other agencies, right? Isn't that what you guys like? Tell us, and it's with Facebook, obviously Facebook ads being kind of the premise of that on how to drive revenue.
Yeah, so we actually primarily work with brands, and a lot of them are sort of in the e-commerce space or the event space. And I fell into helping agency owners because I was part of a Facebook group with John Loomer when I was first getting started out. And a lot of the peers that I was in that group with noticed that I was starting to grow and scale really quickly. And they started reaching out, asking me like, how are you doing this? And I started helping people out, but it became very repetitive. And then I don't even remember how this came about, but someone mentioned to me the whole world of online courses, which I had no idea about before that. And I was like, no way, people don't pay to learn online. Like, that's not a thing. And then I started to explore this and realizing like, holy shit, this industry is almost bigger than porn. Like, and it's growing. But to be fair, I think they say that because most people watch porn for free. So I still think porn is probably the biggest industry out there.
Yeah, I don't know what porn is. I'm going to look that up when we're done with this podcast. So I was like, it sounds familiar, but I'm like, I don't know why that sounds so familiar. It's so weird. I'll do a little research, but just for the podcast, of course.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So they say it's like actually, in courses, and so it's so funny. So I am working on a course, a whole nother conversation we're going to be going live here probably another month on like how to be an influencer.com is the course.
I love it.
And the premise, the premise is because I taught at UCLA about.
You got that domain? Holy shit.
I do, sister.
Amazing.
But I got like 5 years ago. Like I bought it when I was like, okay, I bought all kinds of influencer domains because I was jumping into the space and I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting in the future. Because I teach a class at UCLA, a personal branding, how to be an influencer course. So that's kind of where this all kind of came about. But the reason why I was telling you about that is the course thing kind of blew me away too, because I was like, because my brother he worked over at Creative Live, and this was in San Francisco, and he was like, God, the course thing is like blowing up. Like there's all these people that are doing these courses and people are buying them. And I'm like, I was the same thing. I'm like, what? Like, why would you go pay $100 for a course? Like, I can't see people doing it. Yeah. And then I'm like, God, all you need is if you got 5,000 people buying a $100 course, and it's like, it's insane. The numbers are just absolutely silly, and you don't have to have a niche that the whole world needs to know about. I mean, it's almost better just to have something very specific. Like maybe it's, how to find trolls in New Zealand or something, and a course on how to find them, and you can go find them and you collect them. And as long as there's enough trolls for everybody, I'm assuming you don't want to take all the trolls and like,
motorboating. Yeah.
Motorboat the trolls, which that's a whole nother,
smuggling.
That's probably course 2 and 3. I mean, I could definitely see this thing obviously being built out in front of us. But what are some of the things when you talk about the courses and how long have you been doing courses for?
So about 3.5 years now. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. And obviously you've helped a number of your clients get like 6-figure type revenues. Like and I know it's, once again, I know a lot of the same stuff, but I mean, there's certain tactics or they're like certain pillars that you say, hey, these are the 4 things that we do. They're 5 things. And then obviously it's only an hour podcast. So it's not like you can say, well, if you do these 3 things, you're going to make $1 million here in the next few days. But what would be the pillars for something like this?
Oh yeah, good question. So first of all, I just want to say and like reiterate what you're saying and your decision to launch a course, like absolutely do it. And I'm so behind this industry at the moment because it is disrupting education, right? And in a good way. And yes, there's a lot of cowboys, but do your due diligence and like make sure you're buying from people that are actually doing what you're trying to learn. But even our team here inside of the agency, we invest regularly in their professional development, and they will come to us with courses or resources or workshops or conferences. And we typically will pick online stuff over like a uni-tech type of program because we know the online stuff is probably a bit more relevant and updated a lot faster than universities get around to updating stuff in the space we're in. In terms of like succeeding with an online course, I think it really comes down to your positioning. So your messaging, like your niche, right? And if you try to be everything to everyone right off the bat, you're then competing with like the Frank Kerns, the Ty Lopez's, the people that have a shit ton of budget and credibility behind them. And you're really going to struggle. So I think find like a specific problem that is really keeping people up at night and really like stressing them out, and position yourself around that problem to begin with. And then I think the second most important thing is building your authority and your credibility around that positioning. So if you have to get beta testers through, or if you have to get a cheaper round of people through just so you can get people raving reviews about you, then so be it. Like consider that an investment that is going to come back to you tenfold. I think the big problem is like a lot of us hear these stories about people launching online courses and making $200,000 from their first launches. And so we come in with these massive expectations, we build these things out, and then when we launch and we make like $5,000, which is still fucking great. Like if that's your first, I mean, you validated it some way, but we get deflated because we haven't actually built the authority around our positioning. And then I think the last piece of advice that I don't have 5, I have 3. I hope that's okay. The last thing I would say is don't be a perfectionist about it. So a lot of the times, and I did this the first time, I spent 8 months building the course and getting it perfect. And I remember I hated the sound of my voice. So I would go on Fiverr and get someone to like caption everything. And it was like this whole thing. And then I launched. And honestly, within the next month, the entire course had to change, because when I sold people in, I realized like it wasn't always addressing the questions they were getting. I had to update things. So I would actually recommend like you sell it in, build as you go. So sell it into a group of beta buyers first, and then ask them, like go through a really agile feedback loop with your buyers and go, okay, week 1 is going to be covering this. And you'll see the questions that they ask you, and then you start creating your course content. And sure, it's like an intense way to do it, but it saves you so much time in the long term, and you don't end up doubling up on all this work and having to basically redo everything that you became a perfectionist around, you know?
Yeah, that always seems to be the big thing with most people, is it's just like not launching, right? It's like they're scared to death of this or that. It's like I talk about it with the UCLA students, is the biggest thing is just doing it. Just start writing, start doing this. It's probably gonna be like every first article I ever wrote was terrible. The first video that anybody does on YouTube is terrible. Like it's always, right? It's just, it is what it is. You just have to get over it.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, I mean, I talked about this in the past, but the way I got my job or the career, the thing going at UCLA, being an instructor, was because of my content. Like literally, if I wouldn't have put my content out, they would have known, because I didn't apply for a job to be personal branding in an influencer space. They reached out to me because I was a practitioner and read my article. So, it's like if I wouldn't have done that, it's like you have to put that out there. Like, it's, and of course it's, scary and all this other stuff. But I have people that have done, I have a friend of mine, I'm not going to say his name because he probably listens to the podcast, but his girlfriend has been working on this Facebook thing for probably about 2 years now. And I'm like, you guys, like by the time you launch, like all the stuff you put out is old.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, you got to like go, like just put some stuff out. And so with my course, we're doing kind of what you talked about is, we're going to put whatever, 8 videos or 10 videos, whatever that is, have a foundation. And then we're going to build it as people start asking questions. And hey, we had questions about this. Great. Now I can go build out something behind that. And really it's for what I'm doing is, it is how to be an influencer, but it's not necessarily like how to get a pink poodle and get on a private jet and eat caviar, right? Like, I mean, maybe, but the idea of is like building a personal brand and a foundation on how to be able to go pitch brands and be able to get a free hotel stay or get this or get your car payment paid or whatever this is, right? And it's like the psychology of to do that and explain to people why they need to work with you, brands, because most brands don't know how to work with influencers, right? They don't know what to ask. They don't know how to negotiate. They don't know these certain types of things. So we want to help influencers be able to create that and be able to obviously show the value of what they provide.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I'll probably pick your brain. We'll probably keep in touch. That's probably when I'll bring the briefcase of money from the lottery down to you and be like, hey, it looks like you owe me a free hour or something. Wretched 5 million or whatever the deal is.
Yeah.
Cool. So when the developing of the courses, I mean, is there like, I know we kind of talk about strategies and stuff and like, things to bring like higher conversion. Can you tell us like maybe an example of like a client that you guys have worked with? And I'm just trying to think of like, obviously what everybody wants is a course that makes money. But I think you kind of touched on it as like, it's the same thing with the influencer marketing space. People reach out to me and they're like, I read your article that for every $1 that you can make $8 with influencer marketing. Like, I want to do that program. And I'm like, everybody does. Like, of course, but that doesn't happen with everybody, right? Like, we have to have proper expectations. So can you tell us a little story of maybe a client that you had that you guys absolutely crushed it and you guys did a great course, or like, kind of give me I want to hear a good case study of where Kat went out and crushed it.
Yeah, I think the best case study is our own courses. I think we've just cracked about $15 million in 3 years. So that's been phenomenal for us as a business. And then everything that we learn inside what we do with our own business is what we then bring to clients. I will be honest, we started working with coaches and courses at the beginning, and we worked with some phenomenal ones like Gio, and we helped blow her up, and Giordana, so she's like a love coach. But it isn't a space that we work with anymore, only because we realize that when you work with coaches and people doing courses, there is such a delusionment happening in the marketplace that you are coaching them a lot. There's a lot of coaching happening, and internally the resources, we just didn't have that in our company. So we mostly work with e-commerce and event brands at the moment, or agencies. But if we're talking about strategy, for example, when you were talking, okay, you're launching a course, Shane, about like how to become an influencer, and you have credibility, you've built a reputation around yourself. So in many ways, in a great space to go broad like that, because that is a broad type of course. But if someone was just kind of getting started out, you mentioned like how to get free hotel deals, or how to free hotels, or how to get free products. You could almost split that up and go, well, one of the audiences or the avatars that I'm going to be targeting is, say, women that want to be beauty influencers and they want to get free product from brands, because there's a shit ton of those out there. There's a lot of women that want to start a YouTube channel and just get free Smashbox cosmetics from brands. And if you position yourself like how to get free cosmetics from beauty brands to start your YouTube channel, the content on the back end is exactly the same as, let's say, the avatar of like how to travel the world for free by getting hotels, covered because you're an influencer. It's the same content on the back end, basically, but you're really like refining your messaging to speak to a specific person and a specific want or problem. And that will really help you to cut through, because how to be an influencer is only going to work if you have like that credibility and that warm audience that you've been building up. Whereas when you talk about specific problems, it's like you're speaking to the direct response side of the brain. That's what keeps me up at night. That's what I want. That's my dream. So that would be like kind of an angle there. And then the other thing I would say in terms of like strategy is try to think about how you can build a category-based business with whatever you're doing. So for example, if you're selling a program on how to be an influencer, you may find in a couple years or something like that people will start asking you, hey, I don't have fucking time to send out these emails. I don't have time to set up my YouTube or the graphics or all of that. And you're going to start connecting people. And then you might start to come to realize after a while, like, hey, you know what? Like, I can offer this as a service, like basically have an agency side that complements what I'm teaching. And then you start to build, this is what Kylie Kardashian has done, right? She basically built a huge audience of women for her lipstick brand. And then she launched a skincare brand and it targets the same exact audience. And so she's not having to rebuild credibility and authority with the new audience. She's literally like increasing her AOV by just increasing the SKUs of what she's offering. So I think about what are you doing now as a business, or if you have an existing agency or business. So let's say you're offering e-commerce services to clients. Well, it makes sense to then launch an e-commerce course, because anyone that can't afford your services, sell them the course. And then you know what? Most businesses, they don't have a lot of time. So a lot of the people are going to go in your course and go, dude, I really like you. This strategy is amazing, but I don't have freaking time for this. And who do you think they're going to want to hire, when they get the funds or when they're ready? They're going to want to hire you. So you kind of create like this, it's a bad word, but like this incestuous cycle of, a category-based business where it feeds itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way you start to make real money.
Yeah, and we're gonna be doing something. I mean, the thing is, we've worked this thing kind of backwards because we've done a lot. I mean, I've done a lot of the influencer space. I mean, I've been writing about it for 7 or 8 years, and I do a lot of keynote speeches in regards to it. But I don't do tons of managed services anymore. It's like, because we used to do tons of managed services, and then we're kind of pulling back. Now I'm just doing the education side of things. I mean, they're still continuously learning, and obviously we have influencers on the podcast, and so there'll be tie-ins there. But I might talk to you about the messaging side of things, because there is, once again, I've always fought with like, do I go real general of like, hey, all influencers, like, hey, we're just here to help you make a foundation, whether you're doing makeup or whether you're, whatever you're doing, right? Or is it, if you're just looking for free hotel stays, it's still, you have to like have this base of like, hey, your website and custom email address and like just stuff. You're not going to super hot girl 29 at Gmail. Like, you're going to get old to Nike and they're going to be like, okay, you got to kind of pull your stuff together a little better, right? Than that. So that'll be interesting. Well, I'll talk to you about the messaging. Do you guys obviously help with messaging when it comes to courses? Is that something, or do you guys have a course on messaging?
We help agencies around this, but we don't really have a course for courses necessarily. But one of the beautiful things is it's actually like super easy to test this out really fast using Facebook or Twitter ads, most traffic channels. So what you do is you just set up like micro funnels with your different messaging and your different avatars and run like $200-$300 through each one. Yeah, sure. It's like, you're probably not going to get a return off that budget right away, but it will make you a lot of money long term. And you'll see pretty fast through the data, like which avatar, which messaging, which positioning is working really well for me based on my brand that I already have. And that will give you a really good indication. It's not like scientific, but it can be really eye-opening place to start, because sometimes it feels like, oh, you're just like kind of putting your finger in the air and going like, I'm just picking something for the sake of picking something,
And we have done that with clients in the past where it's like, you really just seeing where the funnel's at, right? Seeing if people are going to bite on it, right? That's kind of the big thing, is because people create something and they throw it out there and like nobody bites. Like, well, that sucks. I'm like, yeah, because you spent 6 months on it and nobody likes it, right? It's like, you really want to kind of, and you talk about agile, right? You talk about like being able to like move on or change or go in a different direction or whatever you need to do. And I think some people don't understand the value in that. I mean, I think they will after they do a course and spend all the money and then don't sell anything. They're like, oh, okay, maybe I should have put a little more time into like researching and taking a look at this little, not think tanks, but these funnels to see if they're working, because you're going and putting it out there and somebody goes, now every dollar you're making $2. Well, that's a good little deal going, right? Now you can build that course around that because there's some interest there.
Yeah. One thing as well would be that, because I do see a lot of people that have wasted a lot of money or that have failed. They have failed at launching something. And I will say to that is like, never consider that a failure, because honestly, like all of my biggest face plants in the entire history of my career singularly been the direct result of me being exactly where I am now. Like, I would not have a $16 million company if I hadn't have failed fundamentally at Yeti. Like, I was heartbroken. I was like, I'm a failure. I was ashamed. I was so terrified of telling my friends about my next venture, because I was like, they're just gonna, like, people are gonna mock me. The skills that you are learning just by setting up a funnel is like, you are literally teaching yourself the keys to the kingdom, like marketing and funnels. Like, if you can get a handle on that, it may not succeed for you right now this year, but that skill in itself, that acumen that you're building, is an investment. Like, that will come back tenfold into whatever you do in the future. So never see it as a failure either.
No, and I love that, because I think that is a big thing. I think that's just, everybody looks at failure. That's what I look at when I talk to people. People are like, well, how can I be successful? And I'm like, well, you got to fail 10,000 times. And people are like, what do you mean? You want me to go fail? And I'm like, literally. everybody is where they're at today is because they failed, right? The people that haven't failed are the people that didn't try, right? Because just 99% of the people aren't going to make it on their first try. And then your second business is probably going to fail. Like, you just have to go through that process. I mean, that's a healthy process, right? We're all where we're at today because we face planted 100 times, 1,000 times, whatever that number is, right? But you use that. And if you don't understand, if you don't learn from that, then that is a failure, right? Because if you're not taking that and going, ooh, I did this wrong. Ooh, I kind of got some investment money early. Ooh, I probably shouldn't have went to that club and motorboated, too many times or whatever, whatever it is, right? You got to look at those numbers, obviously, on the P&Ls. But I think it's important that people realize it's like, hey, it's like, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I hadn't had, like, I talked about this in one of my last podcasts, and I'm not going to into heavy detail, but I got sued by the Attorney General of California for $65 million.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And it was, I know it was kind of like your thing when you're like 16, you're like, I was a stripper. I'm like, well, I got sued for 65 million. So there we go. Now that we're all just telling secrets, for me, it was one of these things that I was like, oh my God, like what just happened, And I won't go into heavy detail about this because I've talked about it a little bit on the podcast. But what happened was, what I learned through that whole process, the good, bad, and the ugly, was you couldn't have taught me that at Harvard. There's no business school that could have said, hey, Shane, let me go ahead and put you through a little situation. It's going to be a fake situation, but you're going to be sued by the Attorney General, and you're going to spend the next 2 years and spend $2 million on fighting them. And I'm going to be like, yeah, it sounds like a great test. Like, how long does it last? And they're like, 2 years and it's $2 million. And I'm like, that sounds like real life. I don't think I want to do that. Right. But I didn't ask for that. Right. And so and certain things happen in your life. It is what it is. And so I look at things like you do. Like, I'm like, listen, people are like, oh, but you failed at that. I'm like, no, not at all, man. Not at all. That means I just got one more thing that I shouldn't do, or I learned something, or I figured out how to do it differently. Like, those are all wins, and it's all perception how you look at things. And I think a lot of people miss out on that. I actually have a buddy of mine, Chris Rudin, that we're doing a company called Fail Forward. And the idea of it is that you fail and then you go forward. Like, if you don't, then there we go. You fail and you can cry and you can do whatever. And, I'm not saying don't be emotional or don't say, God, that sucks, and don't spend a week by yourself, whatever you need to do. But like, you got to move forward. Like, that's just the thing. You got to get back up. Right. And it's like how quickly you do that, and then how quickly you learn to say, oh, you know what? And then become smarter with the way you do things. Right. Because the way I started business today, 1,000 times different 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I had investment money, and I'm like, I'm going to go buy a press release. And I think I paid like $500 for it. And the lady handed it to me. I was like, yeah, they told me in school to get a press release, and I'm holding on to it. Like, I go, hey, what do I do with this? And she goes, I don't know. I just write press release. I don't know what you do with a press release. And I was like, I guess I go give it to my mom or something. Like, Mom, look, I got a press release. And she's like, that's really good, Shane. I'm like, thank you. Like, we're going to put it on the fridge, or like, I didn't know what to do. Right. Like, what do I do with this stuff? And, where there wasn't this huge internet that we can now, do distribution, but you just look at that and it's like, I learned now I can get a press release, beautiful press release written for $10. Cause so it's just, there's certain things you learn. And, once again, now you have these things that you're like, oh, and now that's where courses come in. Right. And I think that's what people don't realize with courses, that literally, I think anybody could do a course because you have knowledge, you have things that you've learned in your life that is unique to you. And if you can put that in something that you can find somebody that wants to know the knowledge that you have, no matter what that is in life. And I think people, they don't really understand that. Like, I'm literally anything that you've done in your past, in the last 10, 15 years, you could learn something from that, whether it's how to backpack or whether it's how to save money on your car insurance, whatever it is, how to save, use credit cards to open your business, something like that. There'll be somebody out there, and obviously you can do keyword search and find, something that people are already looking up. And so it turns interesting. So I have another thing that a website I've been working on for the last few months, but you talked about the relationship niche. And mine is like, I'll have to get the exact domain, but it's like howtogetmyexback.com.
Interesting.
And we've been working on it. Yeah, because I didn't realize there was hundreds of thousands of people a month looking up all pretty much the same search. How do I get my ex back? How do I get my girlfriend back? How do I get my boyfriend back? Like, how do I do this? How do I answer these questions? And a lot of it's a basic stuff like, don't drink a lot and text them, right? Don't drive by their house. Don't go buy a gun. Like, it's all this kind of basic stuff, but like, try not to be too crazy, right? Like, don't do anything too outlandish. But it's just an interesting space. So it's something that I'm working on now because, and I probably shouldn't have told anybody because it was like this secret project. And my team's like, don't tell anybody. I'm like, I won't until tomorrow. But don't worry. Up until that point, nobody will know. We'll just have to release this podcast in 2028 or something. So we won't even be around, but that's okay. At least we had fun while we were here on this earth. So cool. That's interesting. Yeah, I'll have to talk to you a little bit about that because that was because I was doing some keyword research and I just randomly looked at this and I'm like, oh my God, look at all these people. And once again, it happens over and over and over. People breaking up and getting back together and all the fun stuff, and people want to figure it out. And usually you're in another state of mind when you're just got broken up with and you're trying to mend things and you're doing absolutely all the wrong things.
Yeah.
From what I've heard. I've never done that before, ever. Okay. So tell me a little bit about Pay the Invoice, because obviously I've heard a lot of good things about it. And obviously been kind of following you online in regards to some of the stuff on your Instagram and some other fun stuff. What was the premise behind Pay the Invoice, and what is it? I mean, obviously, well, I'm gonna let you tell you. I think I know what it is, but obviously I want you to tell the audience, like, what is the premise behind it and why did you create it?
Yeah, honestly, I wish I could share like this great strategy that, was the premise of it, but I smoked a joint back in September 2018. And the idea was just like, oh, let's bring some people down to New Zealand. And, I'm claiming to be able to help people by, selling this online course. So let's bring them in and work directly with me and document the whole thing. And it was a huge learning lesson for me. For starters, what an eye opener around reality TV. Because I remember bringing the videographer in and the director, and they were like, great, what's the script? What's the story? And I was like, what? It's reality. You just shoot things, right? And they're like, no, that's not how reality works. You need a script and you need a story. And we were so not prepared for that. So it was kind of a fucking mess, to be really honest with you. And we're still in the process of editing right now. And it's ended up being, we didn't even know what it would end up being. We were like, is it going to be a 1 hour thing? Or is it even at one stage we thought it would just be a bunch of little videos. And at the moment it's ended up being a 9-part, 10-minute docu-series. And I laugh because every time we publish one of these episodes, people online will be like, why is it taking so long? These are 10-minute episodes. And we are like sweating behind the scenes. We're like, it takes us like 2.5 weeks. We're literally doing the last edit like the hour before it's due to be published. And so it's been a really amazing, challenging and intense learning experience for me at the same token. But yeah, the premise was basically, let's just bring some agency owners down to New Zealand, work with them, help them build their businesses up. And for me, the big thing that it reiterated was the importance of mindset and how your ability to control your emotional refractory periods and how you perceive these challenges that you come up. You were talking about how you've had so many failures, and really the only difference between someone who is successful and isn't is that perseverance, right? You kept getting up. You got sued for 2 years, and that would crumble most people. Most people would fold in and go like, fuck that, I'm too afraid to get into this again, right? And which you see in relationships as well, right? Dating relationships. Yeah. I've been hurt, I've been cheated on, I'm not going to put myself out there anymore, which is fundamentally the wrong way to go about it, right? So the way you perceive the challenges and the way how you handle your expectations and your attachment to your expectations plays a huge role in your ability to build something for yourself. So that was a really great reminder for me. And yeah, we're still in the process of editing everything. We took a mid-series break, so we're relaunching November 15th, and we'll relaunch the second part of it. And we were going to try to do it again this year, but I think we just need a breather. We just need to take a breath for a minute and recoup.
So just your candor, it's just very refreshing. You're like, I smoked a joint and then we decided to do a web series. or a doc series. I'm like, there we go. I mean, most people would leave out a few parts in there, but I love the fact you're like, so we started off, I was just going to eat some ice cream and I was like, why don't we bring on a whole production team and do a production with no script? And that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. Once again, I think it's interesting just how you do that. Because once again, you talk about, there's people that like in the beginning, you were like over preparing for everything, right? You got to do this, captions your voice and this. And now you're just smoking joints and you're like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And people are like, this is kind of a little crazy. I mean, do you get that a lot? Like people are like, I think you're crazy. And then you're like, yeah, kind of like whatever. I passed the ice cream and we're going to do this on Tuesday.
Yeah, actually, that's a really interesting observation. I've never thought of that because I did used to be a perfectionist.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm definitely not that. Like now I get an idea and it's like even my operations person has created an internal rule where I'm not allowed to even vocalize new ideas to the team. I have to put it on a list. Every month it goes on the list. She has to go through, and it's too much sometimes for people. It's like, oh, let's do this. Let's do this. I think if I had known the whole implications of what I was getting into with Pay the Invoice, I probably wouldn't have gone ahead with it. So I actually love the way I operate nowadays, because it's almost like stupid naivety. Like I'm just like, I'm blind to like what's about to hit me. And so I'm like, let's do it. And I think if I thought things through too much, I'd be like, oh, but what about this and this? And it would stop me, you know? But yeah, interesting. I don't know what flipped that. I never thought about that. Yeah, because I used to be a perfectionist. Yeah.
I'll tell you what it was. It was a joint. I'll tell you. I mean, that joint would be like, you know what? I don't know. We need to plan this out. Hold on real quick. All right, let's just do this. Let's just do this. Who's down? Everybody's like, whoa, I guess. I think we're down. Let me hit that, and then we'll see if we're just as down as you are. I think that's awesome. I think that's really awesome that you kind of, once again, I know that it takes resources, and my team hasn't put me on restriction like your team has yet. But I am very close, because I am a little bit, and if my team was on the line right now, they'd probably be cussing me out. But I am the like, hey, I've got an idea. And if my partner, every time he would actually be a millionaire if I gave him $1 for every time I said, I'm like, hey, dude, I got an idea. And he's like, oh, Jesus, here we go with Shane's idea. What did you do over the weekend, Shane? I'm like, no, I saw this one thing, and I was kind of thinking, I'm going to ask you this. How big of a team do you have?
Well, let me ask you this first. How many domains do you own?
So now this is going to be funny. So it used to be like, I literally had to go to like a domain therapist. Not really, but there was a certain point I think I had over 500 or 600 domains at a certain point. Like this was probably about 7 or 8 years ago.
Dude, that's a lot. Holy
crazy.
shit.
But I had some really, I really want to tell you some of the good ones, because I think you would appreciate them, but I almost can't tell you, because it's like, I don't know if I have any kids under 18 that are listening to the podcast. But it might start with a P word, and you might have already referenced it early in the podcast. So anybody rewinds it, we could talk about it. It's bigger than courses from what we understand, but it's free if you go and you can find it on websites. But I used to have like some phenomenal, I would buy them because I thought they were funny. Like I'm just going to tell you, like it's my podcast. What are we going to do? Like ban me or something? I used to own like Mr. Meat Straw was one. And I just bought, and I used to own Mucho Booty. I thought it was hilarious. Like, and there was nothing, I never put anything on there. And it was these domains, and I would like find it, going way down the rabbit's tunnel, and I'd be like, Mucho Booty. And I would start laughing like you did. And I'm like, I'm buying it. And then I would go home and I'd tell my wife, hey, I just bought Mucho Booty. And she goes, what are you buying Mucho Booty for? And I'm like, I don't know, just in case somebody wants to get it one day. And I kind of thought, I can sell these. And I've only sold one domain name. Actually, it was an influencer domain name that I did sell for a good little chunk of change, but everything else. And so I'm paying $10 a year at that point for 500 domains, which is like $5,000 a year. And my wife's like, you're gonna build out 5,000 or 500 websites? And I go, maybe this weekend. Maybe I'm just going to have a crazy idea. I'm just going to smoke some weed and go ahead and put up, 500 domain names. And it never happened. So I never did that. But now I own probably 30 or 40. So went to rehab. I've been a good boy. I haven't went crazy. I have a few that I probably don't need. And all the ones that like I thought was funny. Like I bought howibrokemybackmountain.com, right? Because it was like gay. I thought it was going to be like gay porn, because remember Brokeback Mountain? So it was like, I thought like, there was all kinds, I think I just would like, and I'd buy them and laugh. I just think merely it was like $10 for humor. I was like, why go to a comedy club when I can just go look up these domain names? And I had a lot of them. And I have to find the old list, because I'll look at every once in a while and I'm like, oh, you're so funny, Shane. It's like, oh, so fun. Fun.
Some of those like Mucho Booty is actually probably worth a lot now.
I'm telling you, I really probably could have done something with them, at least, but I wasn't really like looking to like make them into porn sites, because I was like more affiliate stuff, which I did affiliate stuff. I just liked them. Like I really didn't have plans on building out all of them, and they weren't all porn related, but I was merely for humor. Like I literally would and then I wouldn't let them go, because I was like, well, somebody's going to go buy Mucho Booty if I get rid of it. Well, that's kind of the premise. Like you don't own it really, it's like somebody else buys it. So there's only been, like I said, I sold a good one in the influencer space. That was a chunk of change that I went back and forth with the guy and got a good little deal out of it. So, that was, I don't know if it paid for all my hosting for the 10 years on 500 domain names, but give or take a few bucks here and there.
It sounds like the first step is admitting you have a problem,
This is like counseling, kind of like, that's the podcast is counseling for me. So then I leave and I go, okay, yeah, I have a problem still. So that's good to know. Thanks for confirming that, by the way, Kat. You're a team player.
I'm here
You're
for
a
you.
team
I'm here
player.
for you.
That's it.
Yeah.
I know. It takes a team.
Mm.
So what other cool projects are you working on these days? So obviously you have the one that you're in the middle of right now in regards to the invoice, pay the invoice.
Mm.
You got any other, and I know you just said that you're like literally on restriction right now. So I don't know if you can even, if you bring up a new project that hasn't happened, I think you're going to probably get your hand slapped. But if nobody's listening to this, and maybe we'll put this out 3 months or something so you can talk about a project you want to do. But is there anything cool you got going on?
Yeah, so at the moment, my big target for the next year is to start to set up the company where it can kind of operate without me, because I have started a new project with my little sister called Theory of Her, where we are selling organic female refresher sprays. So it's like a vagina spray. And in the sex industry, new space, I'm not allowed to run Facebook ads or Instagram. So like literally the thing that I am strongest at, I have my hands tied behind my back. So it's definitely a brand new learning curve I'm going on with this project, but it excites me so much. Like I'm so excited. We're about to like custom design, 3D print a dildo. And like that is just like, I don't know, it gets me up in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. I have so many other things to say. I mean, that you just like, I was like, I felt like we were playing softball and you just like threw the ball to me and I had like this huge bat. I'm just like, is this going to be a home run? Oh, I think it is. So, it's funny. I had a company and I can't remember them. I mean, I get a lot of leads on my website, but I had a lady that reached out to me about something similar.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, and I did a call with her and for me, I was like, not that I don't know enough about the female parts, right? We don't have to go heavy into the research I've done there, but I will tell you that it just was something that was outside of what I was like, I just don't know if I could really help you. Like, I get it, but it's like, I've done my research, but I'm married now. So I don't do tons more research. I'm pretty retired at this point, but it's interesting. I think that's going to be an interesting space for you for sure. I think, obviously that's, thing that women deal with. So I think it's, if you can figure out how to do it. And I do know, because I've worked in a lot of niches where you can't do Facebook ads, right? Especially, now they're not doing anything in regards to weight loss, but when I've done like fitness and stuff like that, it's real difficult. Any before and after pictures or anything that can potentially offend anybody in the world at any point, at any time, can't be a Facebook ad, which I always thought was kind of interesting. It's like, we're not really telling everybody that they're fat. We're just saying, look what you can do. And they're like, yeah, but it shows one picture when she's fat and one when she's skinny. And I'm like, I never said she was fat in that picture. You said that. I'm like, why would you judge her like that? Not really, but obviously Facebook's not going to take the time and, talk to me about that. But yeah, there's, that in the cannabis space. And I think there's some really interesting places where it's like, you got to think outside the box.
Yeah. So, you might have a couple domains or something there we could advertise on.
We might, I think we're going to have another conversation after this.
Yeah.
I might own that, by the way. It might be a picture of just my brother at the US getting a little glove check. Don't worry. I'll only hurt for a minute. Sir, don't look back at us, please. Don't look back. It's probably better if you look forward.
Backing up into it. Yeah.
Yeah, you do know my brother. You do know my brother. That's awesome. That's a whole nother story. But so I also saw that like this. I was looking at your Instagram, probably. Not really say stalking, but doing research, as some other people put it. You did a cryotherapy, right? Did you just do something a while ago? How was it? I had so there's one that opened up like right around the corner from my house, and I've driven by there. I've talked to like 2 people that have done it, and they like it. What was your how did you like it, or what were you thinking?
Oh, it's fucking horrible. Like I hate it, but it only lasts 2.5 minutes. So it's supposed to be really, I'm a runner, so I run most days, and it's supposed to be really good for inflammation and aging and all of these benefits like that. And it's minus 170 degrees Celsius. Like no place on earth would even get that cold, right? So we are totally hacking biology, humans.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, whether it works or not. It does hurt with my knees, and it does help with my knees. So yeah.
But it hurts your knees.
Sucks. Yeah, it sucks, but it's only 2.5 minutes. So totally do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're quite the salesperson. You're like, no, it's murder. I'd rather die or cut my legs off. But I liked it. You should try it. I'm like, that's like when people eat food. They're like, God, this tastes like shit. Here, try some. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? Why would I? I'm just going to take your word for it. I'll just put it on my list of things not to eat in the future. We don't need it. I don't have to test it.
No, so I really would love to see a photo of you doing it. Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, it's totally. I'll send you some DMs of me in my cryotherapy session. Okay, it's interesting. Okay, because I'm a runner as well, so that's the reason why. That's the only reason I thought about it is because my knees. I'm in my 40s now, so it's that they're not quite as forgiving as they were when I was young and agile, and it is what it is.
There's so many cool treatments out there, and weird and wonderful things, and float sessions, and cryotherapy, and all of these things. Yeah, I'm down for all of it to try it all.
Yeah. See, that's me too. I'm of like, hey, and this is a funny story. I'm going to tell you this story. So you will appreciate this as somebody that just tries anything. So my brother used to live on Haight and Ashbury in San Francisco. And there was something happened with my back. So I've had a little bit of back issues just because I used to do boxing and I did CrossFit. And anyways, long story short. So I played like footy. You know footy?
Soccer?
You ever heard of footy?
Soccer.
No, footy's it's like rugby, but it's like Australian.
Oh,
so I don't
right.
know.
Okay, it's rugby.
Of course, you have to be. Yeah, it's like rugby. Yeah. So anyway, I've gotten beat up over the years, right? So, and it's okay. I'm okay with that. And so now I'm like doing Pilates with like 60-year-old women, which it is kind of like I'm used to fifth and sixth gear and like I'm in first gear. And I'm like, all right, put your legs up and, tabletop. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But the funny part about this thing was there was a guy that was like supposed to be like a shaman. And my brother was having friends that would come by and he wanted to he's like, oh, I can heal your back stuff. Like you tell your brother to come on in. So this is once again, Haight and Ashbury. So let me, San Francisco, no drug use. I'm sure nobody was on drugs when we were doing this. And the guy's like, gets by me. He's like, it does this sound. And I kind of jump because I'm like, oh snap. Cause he's behind me. Right. And he's doing some weird magic stuff. So it was so bad. And because once again, I was like, I'll try anything once. Like, let's just, let's give this guy a chance. Right. And he does this weird, almost, I thought he was maybe having a baby or like a gremlin was coming out of his stomach or something. And I can't look at him. And he was doing this weird, and my brother was laughing and my mom was there. My mom was laughing. They all both had to leave the room. And I had to continue the session with this guy for like an hour. Finally, I was like, I don't know how he yelled that long. Like it was like a visceral, like a growl from like the innards.
Wow.
And he just, yeah. And so so once again, I'll try anything once. I don't know if I'm going to do the heavy shaman work from white guys with dreads, but I tried it and I can take it off the list, I guess is what I'm telling you.
Well, I guess I know what to get you for Christmas, a colonoscopy.
I didn't want to bring it up, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to send you a little wish list and you just go ahead and put out whatever you want on there and I'll just go ahead and buy me a few things and send it on out here to California.
Nice.
So we got one last question for you. And this is the one that really kind of perplexes people because I really come hot and heavy on the last question. So if I was to give you a lottery ticket, now that's kind of weird that we're talking about a lottery ticket again, and you're the future, so we can figure this out. But if I was to give you a winning lottery ticket, right, for $10 million, what would you use that money on?
Okay, well, I would lose 30% right away on taxes. Not willingly, but I got to do my part.
Yeah.
So I would probably invest a couple million into this new brand Theory of Her, because starting a new brand and a new company can be very resource intensive, especially a product. And then one of the things that I'm really keen to start, this is something that I'm trying to set funds aside as well in the company, is I've been really interested in exploring universal base incomes and the theory of it. And I would love to test something out, especially like young juvies, like people out of prison, to see what impact does it have on recidivism, crime rates, society, and all of that stuff when you take away people's basic, so many people on this planet are still in that, they don't know how to fucking find food or shelter for their family. And it causes a lot of the crime and a lot of the issues that happens in our society.
For sure.
So I'm really intrigued by universal base income, and I'd love to test something out like that, like a pilot program, especially on people coming out of jail, to see how it impacts society as a whole when you take this basic need to feed yourself and shelter away, no strings attached. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm hoping I win because I'd love to chip in for that. I think that's,
amazing.
The Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's like the basic things that a lot of people don't have. And I think we just all over the world, we don't realize how lucky we have it, with things that we do have, here in the US or wherever you're located. And it's you really have to understand, there's people that don't have the basics, the stuff that every morning we go and grab our little $5 coffee and go do my Pilates and I complain about this, that, and the other. It's you have nothing to complain about at the end of the day. Life is good, life is good.
Look after people. It's the number one rule in life, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. You should always treat people.
And have lots of orgasms as well. That's also very important.
I was hello, I think it could be number one, but I know we were fighting with number one, number two, take care of people and
orgasms also help the world.
Number.
The more women come, the happier the world will be, for sure.
I didn't want to bring that up, but I think this is going to be the spiciest podcast that I've ever done. I don't know if it's going to get much spicier with everybody else. And the cool part is I'm actually going to send out this podcast to everybody before I go and interview them and say, this is kind of the premise of the podcast. We usually talk heavy drugs, orgasms, dildos is usually pretty popular. And I just want to see where you're at mentally. So we're just going to have conversations. And if you haven't stripped in the past, it's probably not a good podcast for you. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much for the potential of interviewing me, Shane.
Yeah.
Kat, you were an absolute angel. I'll tell you, I love the transparency. I love the energy. everything about you. You're a soldier, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Really good
Absolutely.
to be on here. Yeah.
Awesome. Kat, you have an awesome rest of your day. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. It's been such an honor.
All righty. Absolutely. We'll talk soon.